welcome back to Ancient Edge. Today we're unraveling one of history's most overlooked mysteries, one hidden within the very walls of Europe's greatest sacred structures. Imagine this: a vast monastery, its wooden beams soaring overhead, perfectly preserved for centuries. Around it the world crumbles, yet these timbers endure, untouched by rot that typically devours wood in just years. How did medieval monks achieve the impossible without a single synthetic chemical, armed only with botanical knowledge and raw ingenuity? The answer lies in mastery, a profound understanding of nature itself. Today, we're uncovering the forgotten formulas and architectural genius that preserved sacred spaces for 1,000 years. The relentless enemy understanding medieval wood decay. To understand how monks conquered wood decay, we must first confront the enemy itself. Wood rot wasn't merely an aesthetic nuisance, it was an existential threat. In an age where timber formed the skeletal framework of every significant structure, from cathedrals to monasteries to fortifications, decay meant structural collapse and the loss of irreplaceable knowledge housed within library walls. Picture, if you will, a cathedral in the year 1200. Its timber frame faces an invisible enemy, fungal spores, moisture seeping from below, and wood-boring insects with relentless appetites. Without modern fungicides, a typical wooden beam would surrender to rot within 5 to 10 years. The problem was, well, catastrophic. Medieval builders couldn't simply replace timbers. Each beam represented months of labor, vast resources, and expertise. The wood itself was precious, harvested from ancient forests taking centuries to grow. Beyond the practical devastation, wood decay carried spiritual weight. A monastery whose beams crumbled was failing in its sacred duty. These structures were meant to transcend time, to stand as monuments to faith and permanence. Yet nature cared nothing for these ambitions. This wasn't a challenge monks could ignore. It demanded innovation, observation, and a willingness to experiment with every natural substance their gardens and forests could provide. Medieval monasteries weren't merely religious centers, they were laboratories of survival. The monks understood something modern industrialized society has largely forgotten. Nature itself contained answers to nearly every problem humans faced. This wasn't superstition, it was empirical knowledge, accumulated across centuries and recorded in manuscripts. Within monastic walls, vast herbals were cultivated with deliberate purpose. Gardens served multiple roles: medicine for the sick, sustenance for the community, and crucially, raw materials for preservation. The monks understood that certain plants possessed properties hostile to organisms that devoured wood. They observed that some barks repelled insects, that certain resins seemed impervious to rot, that specific preparations could seal wood against moisture. The monastic library became a repository of botanical wisdom. Texts like the Liber Simplicis Medicinae documented not only the medicinal properties of plants, but their practical applications in preservation and craft. Monks recognized that compounds described for healing could also heal the slow disease of wood decay. A tannin that restored strength to failing blood vessels might equally fortify wood against fungal invasion. An oil that soothed inflamed skin might create an impenetrable barrier against moisture. The most effective treatments weren't created through mystical ritual, but through patient experimentation and methodical refinement. Monks fermented plant materials to concentrate active compounds. They extracted resinous substances through heat and pressure. They blended oils and waxes in precise proportions, recording successes and failures. Over generations, these experiments yielded formulas of remarkable efficacy, natural treatments that worked through the elegant chemistry of nature itself. Let's examine the specific substances that armed medieval builders against decay. These weren't guesses. They were the fruits of practical knowledge, validated by centuries of performance. Charring, or what the Japanese would later formalize as shu-sugi-ban, represents perhaps the most elegant solution. Monks discovered that burning the wood surface created a protective layer of pure carbon, a barrier impervious to moisture, hostile to fungi and insects, and remarkably durable. The charred surface prevented decay organisms from accessing the living cellulose beneath. More commonly, monks applied wood tar, distilled through the charcoal-making process. This dark, viscous liquid created a waterproof seal that repelled moisture, the primary vector through which decay organisms entered wood. When brushed onto surfaces, it penetrated wood fibers, hardening into a protective barrier. Roman shipbuilders had discovered this same truth, using tar to protect hulls from wooden ship-devouring organisms. Medieval monks inherited and refined this knowledge. Linseed oil pressed from flax seeds became a standard treatment in monastic workshops. Unlike tar's dramatic sealing effect, linseed oil worked through gradual penetration and chemical transformation. As it oxidized within the wood's cellular structure, it hardened into a protective barrier from within, actually strengthening the wood while repelling water and decay fungal spores. This process took time, but results were remarkable. Wood treated with linseed oil resisted decay for generations. Beeswax, harvested from monastery hives, offered another solution, particularly for interior timbers. Mixed with natural oils, it created a finish that protected wood from cracking and drying, while remaining non-toxic and, aesthetically pleasing. This represented stewardship, using the monastery's own resources in a closed cycle of production and application. The most sophisticated treatments involved plant extracts derived from the monastery's botanical wealth. Hemlock bark, rich in tannins, was boiled to produce a liquid applied to exposed beams. Yet monks understood something modern industrial preservation often overlooks. Chemistry alone was insufficient. The true genius lay in a holistic approach, a comprehensive strategy treating the entire building as a living system. Water, monks recognized, was the fundamental enemy. Decay fungi required moisture to thrive. Remove moisture, and you remove the mechanism of destruction. As we stand in the 21st century, surrounded by synthetic chemicals and industrial solutions, we might dismiss these achievements as quaint. We would be profoundly wrong. The monastic approach contains lessons we're rediscovering through ecological pressure and scientific humility. Today's sustainability movement amounts largely to rediscovery. Standing before a medieval monastery today, we witness the material legacy of a profound conversation between human intelligence and natural systems. Monks didn't view nature as an adversary to conquer. They viewed it as a vast library of solutions, accessible to anyone patient enough to observe and learn. Their success, structures enduring 1,000 years, speaks eloquently to this approach's validity. If this journey fascinated you, subscribe to Ancient Edge to discover more forgotten knowledge. Share this video with others who wonder about secrets hidden in plain sight. The past is calling. Are you listening?